Welcome to Strategies for Tribal Allyship and Coalitions, highlighting the Protect Your Stock Coalition. While I go through today's guidelines, we'd love to learn who is in the room with us. So please introduce yourselves in the chat by sending your name, title, and organization, pronouns, and native land. We will recap these items to share. As a continuing in improving SPCM practice, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the native land that we are on today. I am currently located in San Jose, within the unceded territory of the Muecwa people. I know people here are tuning in virtually from different areas, so I encourage you to learn what native land you are living on. As you share your name, org, and pronouns in the chat, please also share the native lands you are on. We're sharing a website in the chat that might be helpful as a starting point in your own research. Warning that maps can be insufficient and may not fully represent shared spaces, time periods, and overlapping territories. We encourage you to learn more by engaging directly with local Indigenous-led and serving nonprofits and local tribes. In fact, SPCN itself is continually working on improving our acknowledgement along with our trusted community partners and leaders. Together, let us commit to educating ourselves and advocating for Indigenous peoples, communities neglected and displaced by the US government and others who are subject to colonial exploitation across the world. For accessibility purposes, we do have the automated closed captioning feature in Zoom activated. And now with this, you do have the ability to move the captions around on your screen to place more convenient, or you can disable the closed caption feature entirely if you prefer not to have it up. So to do that, you actually reference the bar at the bottom of your Zoom, click on live transcript on the right, and then click hide subtitles. If you're having any tech or other troubles during this session, please private message me directly in the chat and I'll try to help you out. We do ask that you remain on mute throughout the program, so please use the chat to send questions. There will also be a time for Q&A at the end of the session as well. So now I would like to introduce our panel of distinguished speakers. Valentin Lopez, Chairman of the Amah Mutsun Tribal Band, Megan Fluke, Executive Director of Green Foothills, Teddy Simon from the ACLU of Northern California, Advocate for the Racial and Economic Justice Program, Alexi Sigona, Land Committee's co-chair of the Amah Mutsun Land Trust. Sorry, Alexi, for screwing that up. Apologies about that. But I'm going to actually start by passing it over to Chairman Lopez to begin the presentation. Thank you for being here today.
My name is Valentin Lopez, and I'm the chairman of the Amah Mutsun Tribal Band. And our tribe is comprised of the descendants, the indigenous descendants, that were taken to missions San Juan Bautista and Santa Cruz. I have lineage and ancestry that were taken to both San Juan Bautista and Santa Cruz. The history of indigenous people have never been told. We've been identified as hunters and gatherers, just simple people, just a long generation connected to the cave people who just went around grunting and looking for food, and if they found something to eat, they were lucky. That is the furthest thing from the truth. Our people were very sophisticated land managers. They took care of the environments. They had a very intimate relationship with Creator. They had prayers and ceremonies. They had, and they took care of the environment. Our creation story tells us that it's our responsibility to take care of Mother Earth and all living things. And our ancestors took that responsibility very important. They recognized that they had the responsibility to have the clean rivers. They had the responsibility to take care of that there was adequate seed of food resources for the animals year round. In our territory, that's important. Because of the milder temperatures of our area, the bears, for example, did not hibernate. And it was important that they had a food resource year round. Our people understood the importance of preparing habitats for all wildlife. And a good example of that is the way that we took care of the habitat in preparation of the return of the migrating geese and return of the migrating salmon, etc. That period of time lasted for 15 to 20,000 years. And they came to brutal time, the time of the missions and the Spanish. the time of the Mexican period, the time of the American California period. They wanted to destroy our culture, our environment, our spirituality, our humanity. They wanted to force us to accept Christianity and to become law-abiding citizens of Spain. And if we didn't do that, we were to be eliminated. That was followed by the Mexican government, where they were developing these huge ranches and they just saw us as the labor force only, not as human beings, as strictly as a labor force that was easily replaced with other Indians. American California period saw us as in the way. We were preventing them from getting to the gold, from taking the lands, from taking the waters, etc. And so they passed laws to exterminate California Indians. They passed laws to, they paid for bounties for Indians, for Indian scalps. They paid militias to go out and hunt down Indians and to kill them. For the next 100 years, we lived just to ourselves, just basically hiding in the shadows. We lived taking care of the crops and sheep and identifying ourselves as Mexican, not Indian, as a way of survival. They also, I didn't say it, but they had a law of indentured servitude. Indentured servitude is slavery. That law was not repealed until 1937. Indian slavery was legal in California until 1937. That's amazing. That's less than 100 years ago. Our tribe came together in the late 1980s, early 1990s. And since that time, we've been struggling to try and restore the culture, the spirituality, our indigenous knowledge that had been gained over those thousands of years. In 2006, the elders came to our tribal council and said, we need to restore we need to let the public know who we are, and we need to restore our indigenous knowledge, and we need to work now to fulfill our obligation to Creator. They said the Creator never rescinded our obligation to take Mother Earth, and we need to return to that, to fulfill our obligation and to honor our ancestors. Since that time, we've been working hard. We developed a land trust, and the first goal of our land trust is to protect and conserve our sacred and cultural sites. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Juristac. Juristac is Sargent Ranch. It's at the very southern end of Gilroy. It's where the 129 and the 101 come together. And it's the very bottom end of the Santa Cruz Mountains, just across the 129. That's where the Gavilan Range starts. Juristac translates to the place of the big head. And our big head dances were the most important to the Amamutsin. Big head dances are held throughout many California tribal nations. And there again, it's recognized as the most important ceremonies of tribes. In our territory, for the big head dances, people would come from Yosemite. People would come from north, from the Pomo territory, south from the Chumash territories, to participate in these ceremonies. Juristac was also the place where our spiritual leader, Kuksui, lived. He lived in the high mountains, and he would come down to hold these ceremonies. And that's how important they were. Our people were removed from those lands when we were taking the mission San Juan Bautista. Following the mission period, our people returned to Juristac, and they wanted to restore the sacredness to those lands. And they wanted to return to the world that they knew and had been violently pulled from. Of course, that didn't happen. In 1862, there was a smallpox epidemic. And at that time, over 90% of the Indians that were living there, and it was a very small population, over 90% had died. And the few that did survive were removed almost immediately And we have not been back to Eurostock in over 150 years. In 2015, there was a proposal to do sand and gravel mining of 4 of our most sacred mountains at Eurostock. And, you know, our tribe, we said, no more free rides. We're not going to just sit back and let our sacred and cultural sites be destroyed. We're not going to allow free rides anymore. We did not know how we were going to protect and conserve Eurostock and stop that mining permit from being approved. We're a very poor tribe. We do not have money to pay for lawyers, to pay for scientists to do studies to show the impacts of Eurostock. But what we do have is prayers. And what we do have is a voice now. And what we do have that we haven't had for such a long time is a voice that's not afraid to speak in public. And so we started trying, you know, and we talked to people, and we soon learned that the only thing that can stop the mine, because the county regulations would allow this permit to be approved. As a matter of fact, if this permit is denied, the county will probably be sued by the developers, because they're going to say your regulations allow this and you're denying it to us. But we must stop that permit. We must stop that mining permit from being approved. And we were told the only thing that would stop it is overwhelming public support. And so we knew we had to start speaking out in public. We knew we had to start talking to others and asking them to help us reach other people and to get them to understand how Native American spirituality has never been recognized, valued, or understood or appreciated. But yet, it's just as important to us as any other religion is to those who practice that religion. The laws do not allow the protection of our sacred sites. We do not, the American Freedom of Religious Act does not apply to us because we are federally unrecognized. We have no protections. And then the environments and stuff like that are you know, just simply based on our indigenous heritage and stuff like that. There's no laws to protect our sacred and cultural environments. And so we've been asking the public to help us. And that's how this coalition formed that you're going to hear about today. We believe it could very well be the first in the nation like this. So today we've reached out to a lot of people, and the people that we work with, they've also reached out. They've been incredible supporters and allies of the Amah Mutsun. We could not have done it without them. Our work is not done. In many ways, I feel that we are just beginning, because we got, you know, it's going to take us hundreds of years to recover from those hundreds of years of history. But today for Eurostock, you know, we're coming together and we developed a protecteurostock.org website. And we're working, you know, we had a youth walk to support Eurostock. And at our walk, we asked the public to join us. So we had over 400 members, and we had about 100 members there and about 300 people from the public join us on that walk for Eurostock. And we walked from Mission San Juan Bautista to the foothills of Eurostock. We're not allowed on the property of Eurostock, by the way. We've been banned from there. So today we ask the public to help us protect our sacred cultural sites. And the way you can do that is to learn more at Protect Eurostock about what we're doing, and to sign the petition for Protect Eurostock. And also, when you sign your petition, we ask you just not to sign it yourself as an individual, but to ask others that you work with. Ask others in your social circle. Ask others in your family to sign that petition, and ask them to ask other people in their circles to sign that petition as well. Our goal is to have 20,000 signatures. And right now, I believe we're about the 16,000 signatures for our petition. So we have work to go, and we do not have a lot of time. Currently, a lot of people are giving land acknowledgements. Those land acknowledgements have to be meaningful. They can't just be words. They can't just be words. You know, for our land acknowledgements, what we ask is that our ancestors be remembered and valued. What we ask is that people learn the true histories of how indigenous people, and to insist that the truth be told about that history. Today in 4th grade, that true history is not told. It's nothing but fantasies that were developed as alibis and excuses for the church and for the states and the governments. So in the land acknowledgement, we ask that you recognize the indigenous people, that you tell the truth, and that you recognize the importance of healing. Our tribe is working hard to return to our territory, and we ask that you help us return to our territory so that we can restore the traditional indigenous stewardship of the land, to bring back the biodiversity, to bring back clean water, to bring back the species that have been removed from these lands, and to bring them back, and to bring back our native plants. We ask that you recognize that perpetrators must heal, as well as the native people. And and the people that are here today, please know that we're not saying that you're perpetrators. You are not. You are not the ones that was paying the bounty money. You are not the ones that was collecting the bounty money. But please recognize how much you have benefited from that brutal, awful history that resulted in the population of the Ama Mutsun be reduced by over 98%. Please help us understand, or please understand that we need help to bring back our culture, to bring back our spirituality, to bring back our environments, to restore our indigenous knowledge. And then let's heal together. And by healing, I'm talking about the institutions. Those schools need to tell the truth. State parks cannot be cannot continue with parks named after Fremont Peak there in San Juan Bautista, and it was Fremont who was responsible for the largest land massacre in California. In one day, he and his soldiers killed over 1,000 Indians, women, and children. And for that, he's honored with the town name Fremont, and he's honored with mountains and schools and parks. In Sacramento, there's Sutter's Fort. That's the park that brings in the most money for the state of California. But Sutter was a land thief, and he was also a slave trader. He would capture Indians and sell them as slaves. And for that, we honored him with his own park downtown Sacramento. We have to bring back the truth. There's a lot of healing to be done. But that's what needs to be done to bring back true healing so that we can find a path to go forward together. Thank you. And next, I'd like to introduce or pass it on to Alexi Sagona, who is a tribal member.
Great, thank you so much, Chairman. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I'm coming to you from the lands of the Chochenyo Ohlone speaking peoples here in Berkeley, California. And as Chairman said, I'm a tribal member, a member of our Ama Mutsun youth group, and also a PhD candidate here at UC Berkeley. And today I'll be talking a little bit more about Juristac, following up on what Chairman spoke about so passionately. And then I'll be giving some key lessons about, tribal allyship and what that means. Next slide, please. So, as Chairman likes to say, we have an obligation to steward our land until the last sunrise as Ama Mutsun people. And so no matter what happens, we'll continue to practice our culture and enact our responsibilities to Mother Earth we'll always be here. We're going to be here until the last sunrise. And Jurastok is a place that holds great power. And, you know, for me, life slows down when you're in the region. The urban noise pollution disappears when you walk through the canyons. The wind brings cool, fresh air in from the coast. And Jurastok stays cool throughout the summer in the riparian corridors, and it's a great place for habitat for our wildlife and our plant relatives as well. And, you know, indigenous peoples have unique connections to land. Our cultures rely on these important places. Land is not something that provides a recreation where we can go hiking, but instead it's a source of sustenance, spirituality, well-being. It's not a resource, it's our relative, as many of us know. I think here there's a lot of indigenous folks in the audience, so shout out to y'all. Thanks for being here. And to illustrate this point, I want to speak a little bit more about gathering. Next slide, please. So in the Jurastok general area, I really enjoy gathering medicine plants. One place is a adjacent property held by the Land Trust of Santa Cruz County, and they provide access to community members. You know, and just to kind of highlight what gathering means for me, you know, well, first, it involves locating a healthy patch of, you know, plant medicines, let's say mugwort, for example. Next, you know, I usually make a prayer and leave an offering of tobacco, water, or hair for that area. And while gathering, I make sure to keep my mind in a good place. And I think about, you know, what I hope this medicine can bring to myself and to others. It's really intentional. And I also think about my ancestors who did these same practices in these hills. And I think about the generations of tribal members who have not been able to gather on these lands at Jurastok for so long. It really is, you know, sad to have that, not be able to access the Sargent Ranch anymore. And elders have taught me that, you know, the plants that are gathered, you know, that place that they're gathered plays a really important role in how powerful the medicine is. So Ascension Solorzano, a community healer who lived during the late 19th and early 20th century at Jurastok actually, was known to gather medicine in 3 areas. And one of them was at Jurastok because of its power. It is a sacred place of power. So I hope that this example of gathering at Jurastok demonstrates its significance for our community. I mean, we hope to return ceremony there. We hope to have, you know, land stewardship way beyond just gathering. But, you know, just this intentional practice of gathering can really bring a lot of, you know, connection to the land and placemaking. And it's really a relative. It's not a resource to be used. Next slide, please. I also want to highlight what this place Jurastok can do for building community. We've had cultural days at Jurastok where we have one-day educational events for tribal members at that Star Creek Ranch, Land Trust of Santa Cruz County property that I mentioned where we've gathered before. And it's a place to come together and learn. Many people within the Amah Mutsun tribe, which is a tribe of about 600 people, live in far out places. And so, you know, just being able to come together is difficult as a landless tribe without federal recognition. So we have to, you know, collaborate with folks who allow us access onto lands that they hold, and to come, to learn, to be on the land. And so this cultural days, you know, they can really help with identity, with knowing that you can belong on a landscape. And it really supports the stewardship capacity. I think, you know, we're gearing up for having land in the future and being able to steward it, a land of our own. And, you know, with these cultural days, we're really, you know, enabling ourselves to be good stewards when that time comes. Next slide, please. And as Chairman mentioned, we have had 2 Walk for Jurastok events where we gather in downtown San Juan Bautista near the mission San Juan Bautista where our ancestors were taken. And we walk 5 miles to the foothills of Jurastok together. The first time we had a large turnout of nearly 400 people, and it was, you know, open to the general public. And then that next year in 2019, because of the pandemic, it was kept real small, just the youth, which is pictured here. And these walks are great ways to come together, exercise our stewardship obligation. You know, this is a form of us practicing our caretaking of Mother Earth, even though we can't physically access Jurastok, and build relationship with our allies, you know, and we walk together side by side. And I think that's really important. You know, those spaces where you can come together are really key. Next slide, please. And, you know, so now I just want to kind of round out with a couple, you know, do's and don'ts to share with y'all. I've been reflecting about this for these past few days about what, you know, some key lessons might be. Next slide, please. So, you know, pitfalls. Tribes often don't have a lot of capacity. For the Amah Mutsun, for example, our tribal council is all volunteer. So some people have full-time jobs, they have children, they have, you know, a lot of other things going on in their lives. And so, you know, being able to respond to emails or, you know, do things for, come out for a couple hours for things is a lot. And it's asking a lot for community members sometimes. So recognizing that, you know, if you're coming in your position from your job and reaching out to a community that, you know, it's a different power dynamic. And also using your association with tribes in self-promotional manner can be problematic. I know that, you know, the nonprofit structure is geared towards, you know, trying to do self-promotion and stuff, but that's another pitfall, I think. And then, you know, finally seeing yourself as a savior. You know, we're going to be here until the last sunrise. So for example, in this Protect Your Stock Coalition, it's amazing what we've built. But I think it's important to highlight that regardless of what happens, we're still going to be here. We're still going to be stewarding, and, you know, we don't need to be saved. Next slide, please. Now some key tips. Next slide. So, you know, I think what's really important is educating yourself and your organization about Indigenous people's history, as Nick mentioned earlier in the introduction. And also, it was beautiful to see everyone, you know, providing land acknowledgements. That's kind of a first step, right, in learning about the history of the place that you're living on. Building long-term relationships is really important. That, you know, this is something that needs to be sustained. It's something that, you know, is really what Indigenous peoples are looking for, or at least for Amah Mutsun, is these long-term relationships built over time with a lot of trust. And, you know, I think it's always important to mention that, you know, following tribal leadership regarding their lands and culture is important, right? The tribes are the authorities for that, right? On their lands, for their cultural resources and things like that. So following lead from them is important. And finally, partnership is just truly listening and, you know, willing to be changed through a relationship, I think. So just coming into that, being open, just like how I was mentioning when, you know, you're gathering medicines, you have to be in a good place. You know, you can't be in a bad place doing it, and you have to be real intentional about it. So I think that sort of cultivating a relationship between land and people, or just, you know, with tribes and allies, kind of has those same lessons of being real intentional and being in a good place. So thank you. I'll end it there, and I'll pass it to Megan.
Thank you so much, Alexi and Chairman Lopez and Teddy and the Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofits. I'm really grateful to be among all of you today. I'm Megan Fluke. I'm the Executive Director of Green Foothills. Today, I'm sitting on the lands of the Tamian Ohlone speaking people, and lands currently stewarded by the Muwekma Ohlone tribe of the San Francisco Bay Area. Next slide, please. So to share just a little bit about Green Foothills, this is our mission to protect the open space, farmlands, and natural resources of San Mateo and Santa Clara counties for the benefit of all through advocacy, education, and grassroots action. You know, I see that mission and I think about what Alexi, what you just said around resources and the problems there and the evolution that we're always undergoing. Since we were founded in 1962, 60 years ago, we've worked on over 900 campaigns and 60 ballot initiatives protecting 200,000 acres locally. We also have a leadership development program and have graduated over 200 local advocates since 2013. Next slide. So this is a picture of Eurostack. As Chairman Lopez mentioned, the Debt Acquisition Company of America owns 6,400 acres at Eurostack, west of Gilroy, and they want to get permits to build a sand and gravel mine here, permanently destroying this landscape. In addition to this being Amah Mutsun's most sacred site, this area connects the Santa Cruz mountain range to two other mountain ranges for wildlife, the Mount Diablo Range and the Gabilan Range. A big focus of Green Foothills' work is to protect biodiversity of our region, and protecting wildlife connections are a really big, important part of this. So Green Foothills is working to protect Juristock with acknowledgement and respect for the Amah Mutsun's sacred relationship with the land. Chairman Lopez always reminds us of the importance of recognizing truth and history. So I just want to remind us all by saying that the Amah Mutsun, as Chairman Lopez said already, they were violently removed from this ancestral territory at Juristock after millennia of living with and caring for this land. And while protecting Juristock is central to Green Foothills' mission as a nonprofit, that it means it's very little in comparison to the sacred relationship. This land is like family to the Amah Mutsun. And for this reason and others, we're following the Amah Mutsun's leadership. It's really important to Green Foothills that we were invited to by the tribe to partner on this effort. And we advocate and work with the tribe in recognition that there's a history of broken treaties between sovereign Native American nations and non-Indigenous people, and it takes a lot to build trust. And Green Foothills and the Amah Mutsun have spent several years building trust, and our organization is learning a lot from this work. Next slide. So today I want to share just a little bit about our Indigenous partnership work. None of our organization's paths, for those folks representing nonprofits and public agencies today, I know that we'll follow different paths, but I'm going to share a little bit about what our journey has looked like to provide an example. We've definitely made mistakes along the way, and really appreciate Alexi's do's and don'ts, and I saw us there, so know that it's been a learning process. Next slide. So in 2016, Chairman Lopez invited us to join the campaign to fight Juristock. Shortly after, we also launched our own another coalition, the Protect Coyote Valley Coalition, and the Amah Mutsun tribe joined. In 2018 and 2019, Alexi went through our leadership program and we got to know him more. And I remember in 2019, Lexi, you reached out and said, "Hey, have you ever done a land acknowledgement?" And I was like, "What's that?" And he was kind enough to teach me what that was. And we did it at our annual fundraiser. It was our first time. And at that point, we asked him to join our community advisory board. He's been such a help since. Also that year, Chairman Lopez spoke at our rally for Coyote Valley. Next slide. In 2019, the Amah Mutsun tribe launched the Protect Juristock Coalition and with coordination with us. The next year, we selected Chairman Lopez as our annual honoree. I mean, you got a taste of what an inspiration Chairman Lopez was, and it was just an obvious choice. Connected to that event, we launched this project to write an article on the actions towards allyships with local Native Americans. We wanted to better understand as a nonprofit and as Green Foothills what it looks like for our organization to work towards allyship with local tribes, because we just didn't know. And so we wrote this article really selfishly for that purpose, and in hopes that our story and our work would help with others. I want to recognize that was written with heavy input from other tribes, including the Amah Mutsun. Next slide. Last year, we started working with the Muwekma, Amah Mutsun, Post, and Together Bay Area, and the Packard Foundation on this idea of basically providing funding for this partnership work. And last year, we did receive funding along with our other partners, and the Community Foundation funded this as well. Late last year, I joined the board of the Muwekma Ohlone Preservation Foundation, and I'm doing that, wearing my Green Foothills hat, doing that on Green Foothills time. Next slide. Last year, Kalpuli Tonaleke, a San Jose-based Aztec dance group, performed at Nature's Inspiration, and a member of their group, Liz Beth, also graduated from our leadership program. Shortly thereafter, she joined our community advisory board as well. And Val touched on healing and the importance of healing, and we took that to heart when we launched a Healing in Nature series. This idea of the importance of healing ourselves, of healing our relationship with one another, and healing our relationship with the earth has been a central point of this project. And just want to thank, I don't think Val, I don't think you know this, but this whole program was inspired by you and your inspiration. So thank you. just want to flag that, as we've worked with the Amah Mutsun, it's been really important for us to follow tribal leadership and to focus in on healing historic trauma, both particularly of ourselves, and support the healing work that the Amah Mutsun is doing as well. Okay, next slide. So about the Protect Juristok Coalition, it was formed in 2019. It is led by the Amah Mutsun tribe. There are over 25 members and 80 individuals ranging from small community-based organizations and faith-based groups to national nonprofits like the ACLU. Everybody plays a vital role. And this group was formed because there was so much energy across the region to support the Protect Juristok effort, and we needed a place to bring everyone together. Next slide. So a big theme has been keeping momentum up over time. The DEIR was expected back in 2019, and it has been delayed like dozens of times because I think the proponents know that or the county knows that it's going to be sued either by us at the Protect Juristok Coalition or by the proponents. So keeping momentum up when we launched this 3 years ago. Has been a big theme. So these are some of the tactics that we've used to keep the momentum up, and really people I see just as much energy today as I did in 2019. So we've done well. So we hold meetings every 1 to 2 months, depending on needs. We don't just hold a meeting for the sake of a meeting. We always center the voice of the Amah Mutsun tribe. They open and close each meeting. And I'm seeing that I'm running out of time, so I don't want to read through all of this individually. So I'm going to go to the next slide after I just highlight that it's been really important to ensure that everybody has a role, everybody feels a sense of belonging, and we always make space for everybody to weigh in. We really skipped ahead. Okay, so I'm going to make one final point. I knew I'd run out of time. So can we go to the slide that's how we're benefiting from this work? Thank you. So this has been one of the most important pieces for us. It was our board vice president who basically turned to me and said, okay, it's great that we're doing all of this Indigenous allyship work. Are you clear on how Green Foothills is benefiting from all of this? And I do see that there's a little tab. Do you guys see that? Yeah, you want to? Cool, awesome. Thanks. I'm sure everybody appreciates that. So, just to be transparent and address the issue Alexi brought up around saviorism, to really understand and identify how we're benefiting. So, it aligns with our mission. We're way more likely to accomplish we have a vision around local Indigenous tribes being partners in restoring local land. And this is just a quick snippet. It doesn't have the whole bit because I couldn't put it all there. And it's important to us that language was approved by the Mwekma and the Amah Mutsun leadership. There are more external and internal stakeholders who represent the Indigenous experience who are working with us to accomplish goals that we have. There's also just more community trust. Non-Indigenous people and groups are listening to and following the leadership of Indigenous people. And our allyship with tribes is increasing our relevance in the community. And something that's hidden by the bar at the bottom is funding. We are getting funding for this. I'm just going to close with saying that the lives that we live and the nonprofits that we lead today in the United States, it's on the backs of the genocide of Native Americans, the loss of Indigenous knowledge, and the loss of culture. If your nonprofit isn't already working to become a stronger partner to local tribes, this might be a good time to consider that shift. Since Chairman Lopez invited Green Foothills to join the campaign, our nonprofit has only become more effective in our mission. Not that that's the reason why this work is important, but it is something that is benefiting us too, and we just feel so honored to be a part of it. So I skipped over a few things. I will share the slides afterwards. All the content will be available. With that, I'll pass it off to Teddy Simon with the ACLU.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Teddy Simon. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Indigenous Justice Advocate at the ACLU of Northern California, member of the Navajo Nation, and joining you all today from Ohlone territory. It's such an honor to share this virtual space with this panel, and thank you all for taking time out of your days during what is really a difficult time that we are all facing. So we can go to the next slide. I'm going to talk this morning about the ACLU of Northern California's role with the Protect Your Stock campaign, and more broadly, how we've approached building our Indigenous justice work. And I think kind of the first question is, why Indigenous justice at the ACLU? It's not necessarily something that is seen as core to the ACLU's work, or something that you would necessarily kind of associate the ACLU with. So it's important to talk about. At the ACLU of Northern California, we have done work for many decades with tribal communities, but bringing an Indigenous justice lens into our work and explicitly dedicating resources to Indigenous justice is only a few years in the making. Indigenous people are often, if not almost always, left out of national conversations, including conversations about social justice issues and civil liberties. As a general population, Indigenous people and Native peoples hold up all of the worst societal indicators, but policy responses, public narratives that just so infrequently take Indigenous peoples into account. So kind of from my perspective and the perspective of my organization, we are either choosing to do Indigenous justice work, or we are furthering the exclusion of Native peoples, invisibilizing them once again, and contributing to cultural genocide and erasure. So next slide, please. The approach is just about as important as the work itself, if not as important as the work itself. It's not about parachuting in, litigating a case, and piecing out. And we're trying to be really clear about that. It's about lending our power and recognizing, as Chairman Lopez so clearly said, that we got that power as a result of colonial settler systems, lending that power to Indigenous justice work where it is helpful and when it is welcome. Indigenous existence is an affront. It's a challenge to the colonial settler state. And so the stories that people share with us are brave acts of resistance and resilience. So it's so important that we show up and we listen, and that we appreciate and honor the gift that it is to be in that community. So at the ACLU, we're trying to be really intentional about our approach. If we go to the next slide, we've developed guiding principles for our work. These are some of them on the screen. And we're trying to check in and ask, are we lifting up Indigenous people? Are we following the lead of tribal nations? Are we honoring Indigenous values, or are we inadvertently trampling them? And these can be hard questions to ask, and we are holding ourselves accountable to them. We're moving slowly. We're moving at the pace of relationship. There has been incredible amount of broken trust and extraction from tribal communities, that moving at that pace of relationship is paramount. It's not about getting quick wins or flashing news, grabbing stories, but learning and having humility as we go. So next slide, please. As we weave Indigenous justice into our work, it has started really, started with relationship and then moved to the internal work. This piece is so incredibly important to educate ourselves and kind of our people before we engage. Colonial settler systems have been so effective at rewriting, erasing history that we are ignorant of the history of and the current existence of Indigenous peoples in many ways. So at the ACLU, we've done a lot of internal work around educating ourselves and our staff and raising awareness, and really thinking intentionally about how all the work that we do, including gender, sexuality, and reproductive justice, including our criminal justice work, including our voting rights work, and our free speech work, all of that intersects with Indigenous justice. So if we go to the next slide, this is some language taken from our institutional land acknowledgement. And we've used the land acknowledgement practice to educate and engage with our board and our staff and our donors and volunteers. A number of years ago now, Chairman Lopez came and gave a really powerful training on land acknowledgements with a strong focus on why, on building relationships, going way beyond saying the words, but making a real commitment. And we've done similar trainings with ACLU staff nationwide, always really, really emphasizing that if you're not committing to doing Indigenous justice work, you have no right to be offering a land acknowledgement. And it was important to us to financially recognize the Indigenous labor, including honorariums, and the art that you see on the screen was commissioned by Yurok artist Jackie Fawn. So the next slide, we finally get to the external facing work. So some of our priorities are around Indigenous education advocacy, the protection and preservation of sacred sites and ancestral lands, representation and visibility, and public education. I could go on about any of these for a very long time, but I want to talk quickly about our role in the Protect Your Stock campaign. So next slide, please. As I said before, the ACLU is here to support, to center, to learn, and to add value and power where we can. The ACLU has a big megaphone and platform, and we know that we also can suck the air out of a room really quickly. So we try to be careful about leveraging kind of our brand name where we can and where that lends power, and moving out of the way or getting out of the way where we would not be doing that. In some coalitions and campaigns, our voice in the media helps get coverage and can be helpful. In this case, Amah Tribal Band has worked really hard to get really good coverage of these issues. And so the ACLU doesn't need to be a speaker in that space. We do have a big platform to educate and get more people to support. So we do a lot of that, of engaging ACLU members and donors in the work. We also bring clout to advocacy with local governing bodies. So we show up in that way and offer a frame around human rights, civil liberties, and tribal sovereignty that people may not be familiar with. And my next and last slide, these are screenshots of slides that I repurpose a lot. As I think all of our speakers have talked about, there's so little information and knowledge in the public about the history of Indigenous peoples and existence and struggles today. So we're always starting at zero, and it's including the shocking and horrific history of our state and our country and the resilience of Indigenous communities surviving and thriving and leading the way. Every time we talk about our Indigenous justice work, every time we talk about the Protect Your Stock campaign or write advocacy letters, all of the things that we do, we're reaching back over 500 years and weaving these through lines for people, from the mission systems to California genocide to what it looks like for the Amah Tribal Band to be working to protect their sacred land today. And I will just end by saying, again, it's an honor to share this space with this panel, and that the most important piece of all of this work is building relationships and showing up with humility. And I think I am passing it back to Nick.
Thanks, Teddy.
And
wow.
Nick,
yeah,
could we go over to the what you can do slide before we turn it over to questions?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. And Val already said this, but just want to make sure that this gets featured before we leave today. Though I know we'll have time for Q&A. So please sign the Protect Your Stock petition, and that link will be in the chat. And ask your nonprofit to take an official position on Your Stock. Feel free to email me. And happy to support that. We have a statement of support that has a little bit more language beyond the petition. And then also you can support other Indigenous peoples campaigns. If you go to the protectyourstock.org website and the resources page, to the very bottom, there's more information about other campaigns that you can support. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Megan. So we're going to actually move to our next section right now. We're going to move to Q&A. So I know it usually takes folks a few seconds. So if you do have a question, we've been monitoring the chat. Go ahead and drop a question in the chat. You can also raise your hand. And we will allow you to unmute. But I want to actually kind of get at, since I'm at the front of the line, I get to ask the question. I'm going to ask the first one, which is from SVC and staff, says, how do we appropriately involve Indigenous individuals in our organization's learning and decolonize without exploiting the individual's time and knowledge? And that's just a general question to the panel.
Every tribe will be different. And it's important that the first effort be to the tribe itself. Try and work with the tribe versus individuals. But if you work with an individual, that's okay, but recognize that individual is speaking for themselves only. They cannot speak for anyone else, their tribe or any other tribe. You know, so if you want a native perspective, you can talk to an individual. But if you want to know a perspective of a tribe, then that must come from the tribe itself. The hardest part for us coming forward and starting to talk to others was the issue of trust. It was so hard to trust outside our tribe after that history that we experienced in the generations and what we were taught and such like that. So it must be on the timelines as the tribe. It must go at the tribe's pace. You know, we tell people you get one chance with us. You blow that one chance, we'll never come back. You'll never get a second chance. And it must be Indigenous led. It must be tribal led. We only get involved on issues or efforts where our tribe has absolute yes, no authority on every aspect related to our culture. And those are important things too. But I would start with the tribe and realize it does take time, and let them know it takes relationships, and it could take a very long time. You know, I know for a number of organizations that we work with, you know, it takes 7, 8, 10 years. But don't give up. Just don't give up, and know that the tribes have to move at the tribe's pace. That'd be my response.
And I'll offer something, though I'd want to sort of ground this with my other panelist, that one, to do as much learning as you can on your own. Don't expect to have, a sort of a personal teacher out of a tribal member, that there's a lot of content online and a lot of content out there. So learn as much as you can about California's history. Have discussion groups with fellow staff and other nonprofit organizations. Just learn as much as you can. And for Green Foothills, our focus has been really adding capacity as much as we can. So not pulling from, but adding to, and making sure that capacity is wanted. A lot of our work has been just focused in on how can we support fundraising? How can we support resources being directed to the tribe? I'll just leave it at that. I see some head nods, but if anybody wants to add anything to that, or we can go to another question.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate, the process being laid out. I think it's really always hard for organizations like ourselves who are, we're used to just asking people to do things for us, centering our organization. So how do we put that behind us is incredibly difficult and definitely, if not consciously, subconsciously done all the time. So I definitely appreciate that. We do actually have a lot of questions from Reg Fox as well. And unfortunately, they are kind of going over a lot of the same things that we've covered in the presentation in terms of, actions that are taken now in Juristac and what Santa Clara County residents can do about Juristac as well. And I wanted to kind of give you all a little bit more time. I know I was like, I don't want to pull the curtain back too much, but I was peppering the panel with 1 minute, 2 minute warning. So apologies for cutting you all off. If there was anything else you wanted to add regarding steps that people can take right now, in addition to maybe elaborate on anything that you've already spoken about in the presentations.
Chairman, I was thinking about something that you have told me a number of times, and that was around how the tribe is not a group. The tribe is a sovereign nation, and it needs to be treated as such. We're going about our work. We have many nonprofit public agencies here. It's very different than a sovereign nation, than the Amah Mutsun tribe. And so, the work that's been one of our big lessons, I guess, and something that we had to really learn is the Amah Mutsun, in partnering with them. It's not like any other partnership we have with another nonprofit or the work that we do with another public agency. And it needs to reflect that difference.
No, that's an excellent point. I mean, as a matter of fact, when I was preparing for this meeting, I thought of inserting that, and I slipped my mind, so I'm glad you brought that up. Very, very good, Megan. Tribes are sovereign nations. A lot of people think that because we're federally unrecognized, that's just an indicator that we're not really Indians, or we're not Indian enough, or we don't, we're not eligible, or we're not, there's something wrong, something deficient there with the tribe. But the only thing, but please be aware that in 1851, our tribe signed a treaty with the federal government. And that treaty was signed by many of the California tribes that are unrecognized today, by most of them, if not all of them, of the unrecognized tribes, did sign a treaty. And that treaty would have developed 18 reservations, north to south, mostly in Central California. And it would have given the tribes 8.5 million acres. The tribes signed, and then the treaty commissioners signed, and they were from the federal government. They were from the Department of the Military of the federal government. They signed, and then they sent the treaties to Washington, D.C. to be ratified. And those treaties, the state of California did not want treaties. The state of California did not want reservations. They wanted extermination, and that was clear. And so what they did is they passed a resolution asking the president and the U.S. Senate to not ratify those treaties. And with that resolution, they sent a lobbying delegation to Washington, D.C. to lobby the Senate and the president against the signing and ratification of those treaties. Shortly thereafter, the president ordered that the treaties be sealed for 50 years. And that's exactly what happened. But that's why we're not a recognized tribe today. But we are still a sovereign nation. We are recognized by the state of California as a tribe and as a sovereign nation. And that's important. And so when you're dealing with the tribe, you're not dealing with another group, just as Megan said. We're not, the Boy Scouts or the Girl Scouts, and we are a sovereign nation, and we will make our decisions, and our decisions will be at a government level. When we when we talk to the federal government, when we talk to city and county governments, those consultations are government to government. And that's much different. I'll stop there, Megan. Thank you for that.
And thank you, panel, for a really great discussion around some key points I think a lot of us are struggling with. A lot of us are trying to give voice to communities with lived experiences. And I think a lot of those learnings that we could take away from you all are incredibly helpful, insightful.